This is the tutorial for Chapter 1, Section 7, titled The Distributive Properties. Let's take a look at our first problem here. So we are multiplying the number outside the parentheses by each of the numbers inside the parentheses, because the expression inside the parentheses is one number, and the 15 right next to the parentheses means multiply. So in order to multiply the 15 by the entire expression, we need to multiply it by each of the values inside the parentheses. So basically we've got 15 multiplied by 3y, and then we'll bring down a plus sign and do 15 multiplied by negative 5. Now I'm treating that as negative 5 because any minus sign I can treat as plus negative. So when I go ahead and do that multiplication, I end up with 45y minus 75. So looking at this next one here, we're distributing the 3 2/10 over this subtraction. Now, it didn't matter that the 3 2/10 was on the right side of the parentheses or the left side. Either way, you're still going to multiply. So you're just doing 3 2/10 multiplied by 2b, and then I'll bring down a minus sign this time, 10 times by 3 2/10. So you can see how either way you set that up, whether you add the opposite or whether you just treat it as subtraction, you're going to get the same answer. So doubling 3 2/10 gives me 6 4/10 b, and then minus, now the 10 times by 3 2/10 gives me 32. So looking at this next one, I distribute a third over both numbers, so it's a third of 3z, and then I have to take a third of 12. And so a third of 3z, the 3's cancel out, so you're just left with z. And then a third of 12, 3 goes into 12 4 times, so z plus 4 would be that answer. So here we are distributing a negative, so this means the opposite of, and then whatever is inside the parentheses, in this case 14 plus x. So you can think of it as two ways. You can think of it as just the opposite means opposite sign, or you can think of it as the distributive property. You can always put a 1 in between a minus sign and the parenthesis, and then I would distribute that negative 1 over both numbers, so you can see how both numbers switch sign. Same thing here, it's the opposite of both of these terms, so I can think of this as the distributive property. Put a negative 1 or a 1 between the minus sign and the parentheses and distribute that negative 1 over both terms, and it becomes 8 plus 6t. So the opposite means just opposite of both signs, or think of it as negative 1 times the number, which switches both of the signs. So let's take a look at the other types of problems that we'll end up seeing here. And our next one looks like this. We've got to combine like terms. And so I can combine like terms if they have the same variable raised to the same power. So since both of these are n squared, it's like 14n squareds, and you're taking away 7 of the n squareds. So basically you're subtracting the two coefficients. And so when I do that, I end up with 7n squared. On this one, I can collect the two like terms, the 8x and the minus 5x. And so that gives me 3x. And then the 3 minus the 9 gives me negative 6. I had more negatives than positives. That's why it's a minus 6 there. So in this one, I cannot combine the negative 6k squared with anything, because none of the other values, none of the other 3 that are remaining, have a squared symbol. But I can combine the negative 5k with the negative 12k. And when I do that, I end up with a negative 17k. Now this was a plus sign here, and I have a positive 10. I cannot combine with anything else, so I'll just bring it down. On the last few problems, they'll ask you to find the area of the rectangle, and you're supposed to write the expression in a simplified form. So basically, area is base times height. So I'm taking the base, which is 5x minus 2, and I'm multiplying that by the height, which is 4. And so when I do that, I'm distributing the 4 over both of these terms. So I end up with 20x minus 8. And that's the answer we're getting. Now, since we're dealing with the area problem, they don't give us our units. We're just going to say units squared. So whenever we're dealing with area, those are the units. They're always square units. So in this one, we just take the 15 and multiply it by the x minus 5. And so when I do that, I'm distributing the 15 over both of these terms. So I'm left with 15x and then minus 75. And so 75 units squared. So 15x minus 75 units squared would be our answer. So those are the types of problems that you're going to see on this section. Good luck.